Hey everybody, John Granato and Lance Zierlein from the bench. Mornings on ESPN 97.5. Let's talk some Texans football. This week, Deshaun Watson says that Will Fuller is going to ball out, Lance. He says he's going to be one of the best receivers in the league. Bill O'Brien says, I believe he's going to play, we're hoping he plays 16 games. That's obviously the issue. But in the 20 games that Will Fuller has played with Deshaun Watson, he has caught the ball 95 times for over 1,500 yards and 14 touchdowns. That averages over 80 for a season, over 80 catches, over 1,200 yards, and that's about 10, 11 touchdowns, Lance. Those are really, really good numbers. Will Fuller is really, really good. The question is, can Will Fuller stay on the field?
Yeah, I mean, Will Fuller's numbers are interesting. They're splashy. The number that makes the most sense to me, that I get the most excited about, is that Will Fuller had his catch rate go from it was like 51% of the passes targeted at him that he caught. Then it was in like 53% range. Then in year 3, we saw a big jump to 71%, and then last year was 69%. So he's catching more of what is thrown to him, which I think is the big benefit. That's one of the splashy numbers to me that I like. The other one that I pointed out a couple of years ago was that 7 touchdown number in year 2, because I recognized when he was on the field, big explosive plays were happening. If you had added year 1 and year 2 together and his touchdowns, per catch, it was a really big deal. The problem is Will Fuller's never going to be a volume wide receiver. He will get some short catches because of his ability to back defenses off. They just have to stay away from him. And so he's going to get some easy catches, and he'll beat you deep as well. But I question whether or not he's going to be the consistent targeted threat that Deshaun Watson will consistently look for. And of course, we always have to do the thing where if Will plays a full game, but we have enough data here now that we can see that Will Fuller is a factor when he plays, and he's a major factor.
I don't think your dog agrees with you there.
Shut up, Chris!
And I do think that now we do know that Deshaun really, really likes his primary target. And Will Fuller just might be his primary target this year. And Will Fuller, like you said, his targets, his his percentage of receptions per target has gone way up. And maybe he's going to be he's going to be Deshaun's new Whoopi. We'll see. Now, of course, it's tough because D-Hop was there every game. And Will Fuller hasn't been there every game. But I wonder if it's going to be different for Will Fuller this year with the other two guys, with Cobb and Cooks, as opposed to D-Hop over there, that Deshaun might lean on him more, and whether or not that's going to be a really good thing, because if he does say, I got to lean on this guy, and then he's not there for 3, 4, 5 weeks, then that's going to be a real problem, because he did lean on DeAndre, and DeAndre was there every week.
Well, I mean, he's going to go down, depending on what happens this year. If he just doesn't get it done, he'll be one of the biggest teases of almost in Texans history. And then you'll have to worry about what he does on another team, because we know he has the talent. We know he has ability, and that's never been in question. Well, we'll be curious. Let's say that he does turn into Deshaun Watson's target. Well, what happens then? You've got a guy who's got an injury. Let's say he plays 16 games. The league goes 16 games. He plays 16. He balls out. Let's say he gets 1,100 yards and 10 touchdowns, and then has a good playoff run as well. Now the Texans have to decide whether or not they want to extend a player with an injury background. And if you pay him, how much are you going to pay him? Because you just told us you can't afford to pay DeAndre Hopkins what he's looking for. So what's the payday where you say we can't pay Will Fuller because Will Fuller's asking for too much money? If that number approaches, what Hop was making on the way out, I think that would be a concern. You'd have to say, well, maybe they weren't being all the way accurate. And I think they've actually backed off of the whole money thing with DeAndre Hopkins. There was a lot of it was money, and then some of it I think was they just didn't get along. But what happens if he does ball out? Are you giving him a 5-year deal for a lot of money? I mean, man, that's a dangerous scenario.
Well, I don't want to do a long-term deal with him, that's for sure. But listen. That DeAndre Hopkins money thing, that's a crock. That's a crock. And we know they do pay guys that they like. And we've both heard behind the scenes they like Will Fuller a lot. They think Will Fuller is a number one. They think he's going to be a future number one. We've seen some guys, I guess, maybe every once in a while, they've been injury prone and early in their career. Jadeveon Clowney was injury prone early on, and then he wasn't anymore. So maybe Will Fuller will turn that around. I think it's dangerous to give Will Fuller a long-term big deal with guaranteed money, and at the end of the deal where a contract that you just can't get out of because it's going to kill your cap, especially with the cap going down to possibly 175 million next year, 23 million less than it is this year. So yeah, I think it's a dangerous situation that a scenario that you just introduced. But I'm going to tell you this: I think they give it to him. I think they like him. And I think that Deshaun Watson is a better player when he's on the field. We've seen that they're a better offense when Will Fuller is healthy.
Yeah, he's the X factor. I mean, it's been that way for a while. When he's on the field, they have some explosive outcomes offensively. So that's never been in doubt. Staying on the field is what's in doubt. But if he's on the field for the Texans in 2020, I think your odds of having an explosive offense that can threaten 30 points plus every single game goes up exponentially.
Yeah, and this Will Fuller thing, as far as the injuries go, we talked a little bit about it, but Kenny Stills, that's a depth guy, but at that price, at almost $7 million for this year, I don't know that there are many teams in the NFL that would keep a $7 million fourth receiver, but I don't know that the Texans aren't forced to, if you want to know the truth. With Cooks with his concussions and Randall Cobb with his injury issues and Will Fuller with his injury issues, there's just this receiving core has got to have Kenny Stills. You still have to have, if Will Fuller goes down, you still have to have a guy. Well, all of them can actually run up the field and be fast, but you still have to have another guy to fill in that can threaten deep, and that's what Kenny Stills will offer at almost $7 million a year.
That's what we're finding is when you have a true wide receiver one. I mean, one of the top three guys in the league. A lot of these other questions, you're like, yeah, that's a concern. That's a concern. But when it's nut cutting time, you just throw the ball to D-Hop and let him make a play. Now, when you don't have that, these other things that they'll work themselves out issues, they're not they'll work themselves out issues. They become primary issues. So it's going to be interesting to see how the Texans wide receiver core, and there's two new members who have some success in the NFL, will be very interesting to see how this unit shapes up this year.
Well, and it's awfully important to Bill O'Brien, too. Because if this offense falls apart after the D-Hop trade, listen, I don't know that it's ever going to be looked at fondly, but if this offense turns into a top 5 to 10 offense in the NFL, if they make a deep playoff run, God forbid they get to the AFC Championship game or whatever, if they do, listen, it's going to take a lot of the heat off of Bill O'Brien. He still didn't get enough value, obviously. He gave up too much for Tunsil, and he didn't get enough value for DeAndre Hopkins. So it'll never be looked at as way to go, Bill O'Brien. But it can go a long way. If this offense is a lot better and they achieve more in the playoffs, it can go a long way to helping Bill O'Brien, the GM, that's for sure.